find the crucial insights, and really give you the shortcut to being well-informed. Today, we're tackling what is maybe the oldest and I think one of the most consistently frustrating questions in theology. Is a topic known formally as theodicy. It's the problem of evil and divine justice, and it really sits at the heart of so much spiritual wrestling.
It absolutely does. And, for anyone who's not familiar, theodicy is really just the attempt to reconcile three ideas that seem to conflict. God is all-powerful, God is perfectly good, and yet
Evil exists.
evil and suffering undeniably exist. For, 2,000 years, scholars have been wrestling with those two basic questions. Is God really just? And if God is so good, why is there evil?
And our sources today make it very, very clear that this is not a problem with some neat, tidy conclusion that's going to satisfy everyone.
Not at all.
So our mission in this deep dive isn't to solve it, but to understand what the source material says about why the question is so hard to answer. And we'll do that by looking at how two very different biblical figures found their own peace with it.
Exactly. We're looking at the barrier. We're going to trace this whole difficulty through the prophet Habakkuk and the psalmist Asaph, who both, in these really visceral ways, just demanded answers.
Okay, so let's jump right into the heart of it. You mentioned a barrier, that the difficulty isn't just a lack of an explanation, but something human. What is that core reason, according to our sources?
Well, it really boils down to our deeply ingrained human tendency toward what the sources call conditional thinking.
Conditional thinking.
Yeah, it's this insidious, often subconscious mental framework we impose on everything, and especially on our relationship with the divine.
That sounds kind of intellectual, but it's actually incredibly practical, right? It's like we're trying to calculate the universe.
Precisely. That's a great way to put it. Conditional thinking is our unconscious need to force life and God into a giant, reliable math equation. It's a framework of, retribution and reward, a strict cause and effect. If I do this,
Then that must happen.
exactly, we try to bargain even when we don't realize we're doing it.
I think everyone recognizes that inner monologue. It's the feeling that if I perform X, then I am owed Y. The sources lay this out so well, it sounds like I prayed so intensely for this, so he will answer me in this exact way.
Or, and this one goes even deeper, I have devoted my life, I've served, I've lived virtuously, so I am entitled to a life that's free from this kind of suffering. Or we're unconsciously trapping the divine inside a little ledger book that we created.
We're running a spiritual spreadsheet, and the moment that spreadsheet doesn't balance, the moment we suffer when we feel we've been good, or we see someone who's wicked prospering, the whole system just crashes.
And that's the consequence. Our conclusion is either God isn't good, or he's just not paying attention. As long as we see God conditionally as a force that has to operate based on our inputs, we hit this experimental limit. We can't enter into a real unconditional relationship of love. We're stuck in the transaction.
So when the calculator gives you an error message, you panic.
You panic, and the problem of evil feels insurmountable because we've defined goodness as predictability.
That reframes the entire discussion. The issue isn't that God can't explain himself, it's that we're demanding the explanation fit inside our very limited conditional box.
Okay, so to see this crisis in action, let's turn to the two case studies, Habakkuk and Asaph. They lived hundreds of years apart in, radically different realities, but they asked the exact same question.
They did. Both men were struggling intensely with this idea of divine timing. They saw this flagrant injustice, and they were demanding to know why God wasn't acting right now. Habakkuk's question was just desperate. It was, why do the wicked swallow up the righteous? Why isn't the law being enforced? And Asaph's question in Psalm 73, wow, that one feels so modern, so relatable. It's basically, God, why are the wicked prospering? I see them living the good life, they're carefree, and I'm over here just struggling to stay upright.
And if you really unpack their complaint, the essential nature of both questions was this just heart-wrenching shriek. It's not an abstract question. It's about why judgment isn't happening immediately. They're saying the moral order is breaking down, and my calculation that being righteous leads to immediate success, it's failing.
Let's spend a minute on their circumstances because the contrast is so important here. Habakkuk was living in a time of just acute chaos.
Yep.
The Babylonian invasion was on the horizon. The whole nation was terrified.
He's crying out from the middle of it.
Right, amidst political turmoil and the real threat of destruction.
Habakkuk was experiencing chaos externally and internally. His whole conditional framework was based on survival. If we are your people, why is this war happening? If we follow the law, shouldn't we be protected? His whole world was literally falling apart.
Now, contrast that with Asaph. He was likely a court musician, maybe priest, during the absolute peak of Israel's power. We're talking King Solomon's era. Peaceful, incredibly prosperous.
Yes, Asaph wasn't worried about invading armies. He was worried about envy. He was complaining from a position of, relative comfort, looking out at the successful, arrogant people and saying, I've kept my heart pure for what? Look at their easy lives. They have no struggles. They're healthy. They mock justice and get away with it.
That is just fascinating. So whether the context is total terror and war or stability and wealth that leads to envy,
The underlying crisis was identical.
it was. The environment didn't solve the problem because the problem was internal. It was tied to that expectation of immediate, predictable, transactional justice.
It just proves that we're all prone to that spiritual ledger. Whether we expect protection from chaos, like Habakkuk, or a reward for being virtuous, like Asaph, when the world doesn't pay up, the whole conditional mindset just collapses.
Okay, so if the problem is this demand for conditional calculation, the solution must be, what, shutting off the calculator? How did they do that? How did they find a breakthrough when they were so frustrated?
Their resolution, despite everything being different, was identical. They couldn't find the answer while they were engaging with the world's conditional noise. The breakthrough required a shift, a physical and spiritual shift into a space of solitude, a space of pure dialogue.
So where did they go? Did the answer just appear once they withdrew?
Well, they moved from all that noise and anxiety into private dialogue. Habakkuk went to what he calls his watchman's tower. It's a place of solitary vigil, away from the clamor of the city. Asaph, he went into the sanctuary of the Lord, a space dedicated to prayer and focus.
So the key step wasn't getting a better theological argument. It was shutting off the conditional voices of the world and just entering this secret space of uninterrupted prayer.
I think so. And it wasn't an instant fix. The sources imply this was a real effort. But in that private dialogue, the things that plagued them, the prosperity of the wicked, the impending doom, they began to unravel. Not because God gave them an answer for their spreadsheet,
Right.
but because they started to see things through the lens of God's providence, a plan that goes way beyond our immediate cause and effect.
So if the path to getting there involves enduring all this confusion and pain, we have to ask, why? What is the purpose of it?
And that's where the idea of an invitation comes in. The sources synthesize this so beautifully. They see those moments of confusion, of pain, of your expectations just collapsing. They see that not as a punishment, but as an invitation.
An invitation.
Yes. Facing an incomprehensible situation is actually an invitation to be called closer to God. It's a necessary and, painful step to move from a transactional relationship to one based on pure love and trust.
That's a profound reframing. The collapse of the spreadsheet isn't failure, it's a call to a deeper connection. So if the solution requires this radical move away from calculation, then our whole inner questioning has to change. We need to shift from asking what to trusting who.
Exactly. And this is the shift for you, the listener. We have to consciously stop asking those conditional questions like, what did I do wrong to deserve this? Or do I need to pray harder to earn a better outcome? Those are just the calculator running a diagnostic.
We have to get past defining ourselves by our qualifications or our lack of them or even our current suffering. We have to accept the Lord's unconditional love no matter what our circumstances are.
It requires an unconditional confession. The focus has to shift away from demanding transactional fairness and toward trusting the source of love itself, even when, especially when, life makes no sense. The confession is simply, even so, I trust in the Lord's love.
It's a statement that just accepts the reality without demanding an immediate, transactionally fair reason for it.
And the sources stress this necessary collapse. The moment you set aside the human calculations, the complaints, and you try to look at the situation from the Lord's perspective, it means admitting, like Asaph finally did, that our previous calculations were just rooted in ignorance.
Yes, and the promise is that God's work, that unfolding of clarity, will begin right at that spot where your deeply rooted conditional mindset is shattered. It's at that moment of total surrender, of refusing to keep calculating, that reality is unveiled.
It's beautiful. You see it in Asaph's final perspective shift in Psalm 73. He goes from being resentful and envious to just admitting his own ignorance.
He says something like, when I tried to understand all this, it was oppressive to me.
Until I went into the sanctuary. And once he's there, he sees the end of the wicked, sure, but more importantly, he affirms his relationship. He says, I was ignorant and foolish, but I am always with you. You hold my right hand. He moves from demanding answers to affirming companionship, unconditional companionship.
So we started with theodicy, this huge problem of evil, and we found that the barrier is our own conditional bias, our spiritual spreadsheet. The path through it, shown by Habakkuk and Asaph, is solitude, deep prayer, and removing ourselves from the noise of calculation, and the destination is unconditional trust.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the sources suggest something truly radical. That the deepest moments of failure, when our best efforts, our highest expectations, are utterly crushed. When that conditional system completely fails us.
Those moments aren't the end.
No,
Yeah,
a disappointment is precisely the moment we hear the call to a deeper, non-transactional relationship of love.
so it's an opportunity to bravely rise from that disappointment and move toward the unconditional assurance found in that deep relationship.
We'd encourage you to think about one area of your life where you might be struggling with a conditional calculation. Where are you asking, why isn't this working? I did X, Y, and Z. What stands out to you right now as the most calcified spreadsheet in your life? Consider what it might mean to just replace that calculation with unconditional trust this week.
We really hope this deep dive into theodicy and conditional thinking has given you a powerful new perspective for when life brings that inevitable suffering and confusion. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. We'll be back next time with even better content. See you again soon.